Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable unto you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Palm Sunday is always kind of a weird sort of day for me. There are such strong dichotomies present in our worship. It begins with a celebration and ends with death. It begins in protest and ends with a mob. It is a day that shows us that crowds are powerful. For good or for ill, the crowd is powerful. This year, we are living in the Gospel of Luke, and I like Luke. He is a little more focused on the disciples, and because he writes for a wider audience, he is better at taking in the bigger picture. And we began our day today with Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem, which especially in Luke can only be described as a protest march. While the other gospel members remember the crowd shouting Jewish slogans in Aramaic, Luke remembers how they shouted Roman slogans reserved for emperors and governors and generals, to an unarmed man born as a peasant and riding on a donkey. We hear them shout, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest." But rendered in Latin, that sounds an awful lot like "Blessed is the ruler who comes in the name of an emperor, to bring peace on earth and glory in the highest," which is what these same crowds were expected to shout when Roman rulers like Pilate and Herod arrived with their military processions into Jerusalem for this very same festival. The Romans promised the whole of the ancient world peace and security at the point of a sword, but only to those who would stay quiet and obey without question, and to make sure to shout the right slogans at the right times, because the Romans always understood that crowds are powerful. Bread and circuses, after all. And early this morning, the crowds chose Jesus to be this king du jour. But no matter what the crowds say, Jesus was never that kind of king. If humble and riding on a donkey with nothing but peasant cloaks in place of imperial banners didn't make that clear, the opening scene from our Passion reading today certainly should have. After that great display of, albeit understated, Roman power, the disciples get interested in their own greatness. But Jesus has something entirely different to say. The kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. But it is not so with you. Rather, the greatest among you must become like the youngest, the leader like the one who serves. Who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who is at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. Jesus has always been insistent that he has never desired to rule as the Romans rule. But even this humility will not save him now, because crowds are powerful. And Jesus has become caught up in a political drama beyond their or beyond anyone's control. And Luke is clear, more clear than the others, that the crowd, the people, the frenzy of fear and excitement that surrounds this day are primarily responsible for Jesus' death. Even the hostile Roman authorities like Herod and Pilate, secure in their power and control, could really care less about an upstart like Jesus. He is barely on their radar. But they still know that crowds are powerful. And so in the end, they give the crowd what it wants. And what the crowd wants this day is a visible and brutal death, where cruelty is the point. What they want this day is self-censorship, is a reminder to all who see that their job is to stay obedient and quiet, that peace and security at the point of a sword is all anyone should hope for. And maybe one thing that we would be wise to remember this day is that crowds are powerful. And crowds are still powerful. Crowds are unwieldy and their allegiance is easily swayed. And crowds can be cruel in ways that individuals rarely are. But also that in this story, the crowd doesn't win. Not for long, at least. Because what we learn from Jesus is that no matter what the crowd does, love wins. Jesus, the humble servant, wins. Not over the crowd or the empire, but over death itself. We learn that love is even more powerful than all the forces of evil that the world can muster. Humility and love, acts of service and care, the path that Jesus teaches right up until the end is still the most powerful force in the world that can still topple even the cruelest of empires. And so as we journey with Jesus through this harrowing week, through this harrowing time in our history, we too will be asked again and again to choose peace and security or love and service. It is the fundamental choice of humanity. And in the end, it is the only one that matters. Amen.